to ferret out information about last April's shooting rampage that left 22 Nova Scotians dead. He's just revealed in the latest Frank magazine the officer in charge of the RCMP that night was a staff sergeant who for the past several years has been the RCMP's head of traffic services in Nova Scotia. And what's the connection as well, he wonders, with a pair of Nook Nook slippers found among items that the gunman discarded after his murder spree. And Paul Palango joins me on the phone here this afternoon. Paul, good afternoon to you.
Hey, we're back. Glad to be back.
Well, glad you could join us here again today. Let's start off with the officer in charge of the response that night, an RCMP Staff Sergeant Jeffrey West, who you write was for the last several years the head of Nova Scotia's traffic services for the RCMP. And I'm just wondering, are you suggesting that perhaps he didn't have the expertise to handle an event like this?
Well, on the surface, he doesn't appear to have the expertise. It's part of the, the RCMP philosophy of cross-training. Like anyone can do any job. You could be doing a desk job, and then you can suddenly become a commander of a street unit, and vice versa. And there's sort of this interchangeability within the RCMP that is one of the weaknesses of the force. There's very little specialization. So on the surface, you say, well, this is another example of the RCMP putting someone in charge who doesn't have the right qualifications to run a sophisticated or complicated, chaotic situation. But, the more I'm looking at this, and I have a new story coming up in Frank about the chaos any minute now, so that'll be published any minute, that gets into some of the chaos. So, yeah, on the surface, that's what it looks like. But I think there's something else going on here, because there were maybe seven or eight staff sergeants at the scene that night, some from the local area, from Bible Hill. Addie McCallum was there from Pictou. Dave O'Brien was there, who's another traffic guy. But why did they bring this guy in from Halifax?
Yeah, and as I read your article as well, there seems to have been a bit of a discussion, or even a question about who was in charge that night.
Well, they've got this other system set up where you have the incident commander, who in this case they were rotating in this position until 1:22 a.m. when West shows up. But then you have the thing called the risk manager. And the risk manager was another staff sergeant named Rehill, who's from Truro, and he had another guy who replaced him later in the morning, for also Breyer, a staff sergeant from Truro. And the risk manager is sort of the guy who implements policy. So when you had this scene going on at Portapique where you had the ordinary guy, they have the ordinary guys, the guys on the ground, and there's two or three female officers there as well, occasionally trying to do something and trying to get the incident commander to approve it. Then the risk manager would interject, because he's sitting there with all the policies going, oh, no, that's too dangerous. We're going to have the ERT do that. So then they were using the ERT like a taxi service, moving things around. And then they got, as I pointed out in the article today, they get entirely distracted for some reason about lights to the west of Portapique, flashlights, flashing lights, car flashing lights, investigating this for hours and hours upon down on 5 Points and Bayshore Road and whatever, which is not near the scene. They had probably 3 times the officers west of the Portapique River than they had at Portapique. And the ones at Portapique weren't doing anything.
Wow.
They rescued the kids who were trapped in Lisa McCulley's basement.
But even that rescue happened a number of hours after they were first alerted to the fact that there were kids huddled in the basement of this house. And in fact, you write that the RCMP officers were being told, no, you can't go rescue the kids right now.
Well, I've been writing that for a long time. And people, I think in the media have been looking at me like, oh, you're a cuckoo, Paul. But no, my information from the beginning on what was going on the ground was that they were being held back on the road. And this raises all kinds of questions, because this goes against the grain of what a policeman does. Those people who were on the ground wanted to save those kids. And the kids, for people who don't know this, they were the 2 sons of Greg and Jamie Blair, who were among the first killed on Orchard Beach Drive, and their next door neighbor, Lisa McCulley. And the two kids, they're 10 and 12, had to recover a cell phone from their dead father's body, run next door to the McCulley house, where there's two other kids, 10 and 12, a boy and a girl. Their mother is out. She's been shot out on the lawn. And then they go in the basement, and they call the police at 10:01. The police get there at 10:26, but they don't rescue them for well over 2 hours. It's more like 3 hours. And and they're brought to the hospital. We know this because in the police tapes that I recovered, Sergeant Dave Lilly, who and Constable Chris Grund, who made sort of overrode sort of the commands not to do anything, went down there to rescue the kids. And they check off at Colchester Hospital and say, we're going to the hospital with the kids at 10:01. So that's a long time right there from 10. And they were there. So you have to ask yourself, why were the police not going down that road? That's the key question.
Well, and again, you've told us as well that you have a bunch of questions about police response from the get-go, that most of the initial response was to stand at one end of the road and just kind of stand there, I guess.
And the more I think about it, Rick, this is unnatural. This is a sign of it's an unnatural police response. And you have to ask yourself, like, why are they doing this? This is, the RCMP looks so incompetent in this. But the ordinary members on the street are not that incompetent. And the people at the scene, I could tell by listening to the radio and listening to what they were trying to do. Some of them, like Constable Nicholas Dorrington, who's come up in previous stories about the ticket and stuff. He was there. He tried to do something, and they were saying, "Oh, the risk manager said, no, we got to have ERT do this." They're trying to save time, expedite matters, move things along, get things done, and they're being stymied by their commanders.
Wow.
So then you have to ask yourself, as I said, getting back to this, what was really going on? This is unnatural.
It is.
And I think that today, I just saw that my story in Frank has just gone up.
Well, you hang on to that because we're going to take a break here. We've got a news update for you, and we've got more to talk about with Paul, including perhaps a preview of this latest article in Frank. Also want to talk about these pair of nooks, these slippers that were found among some of the discarded items that workmen had apparently left behind, including high RCMP boots and such. It is just about 12:28 right now. We're going to break for that news update, then more with Paul Palango. The news is next, and we'll be back with more right after that.